Hello, Margarida Marques. It's a pleasure to have you on this podcast with me. I would like to start by introducing you. Our friendship, it goes a long way. We used to work in similar jobs in different countries. When I was head of representation in Nicosia, you were doing that in Lisbon. But since then, you've done amazing things. Let me very quickly just give an overview of your career. After leaving the European Commission, you became a member of Parliament in Lisbon, then Secretary of State in the Antonio Costa government, Secretary of State for Europe. And then you became one of the most thought of MEPs, and you took on the very tough role of negotiating the multi-annual framework program, basically the multi-annual budget of the EU, and I would like to ask you on that later. You're currently a coordinator for the Trans-European Networks, author of several books, professor at universities, and I'm honored always to be your friend. So discussing Europe at this particular moment in time is very, very important. I'd like to start by asking you, how do you see the recent developments in Davos, the relationships with the US, and how you see the reaction from the European side to those events in Davos? Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Of course, since you were head of representation in Nicosia in Cyprus, and I was head of representation in Lisbon, we worked very well together when we were both heads of representation. But after, always we had the opportunity to discuss Europe and sometimes to share some happiness and not happiness on what Europe was doing, and it's why it's a pleasure to be here with you to discuss Europe. Of course, your point maybe is the most important point that we need to discuss, and not only to discuss, to take actions. Because since the beginning of the EU, our main ally was United States. So we could work together. European Union trusts United States on defense, on trade relations, and so on. So it means that we work together, we were allies, and now with the Trump administration, we can see that it's no more the situation. And we can start to analyze the different initiatives from the Trump administration side. It's not the case. We don't have time to raise all the points, but trying to answer to your point, of course, the speech given, 72-minute speech given by President Trump in Davos, is Europe must look to it and hear and read the speech to understand which are the Trump ambitions. We know that predictability and stability is not two words that you can use to characterize a Trump administration.
That's right.
But I think that there are one point, because it's something that we need to be very, very clear, is the fact that Trump tries to occupy Greenland. When I say occupy, we don't know the statute. Because Trump moved his position, but finally what he wants, he used the argument, we need to have Greenland because strategic defense, because our defense as United States, But we know that what Trump wants is more than this. Because NATO, since always protect this region, this area, this island. This island was very important and is very important for NATO. There are already an agreement with the United States how United States can work in Greenland, but what Trump wants now is more. And it's clear the position of Denmark and Greenland governments saying, no, we don't want to share our sovereignty with United States. We want to protect the island. We want to protect the sovereignty. Only one word more. Normally, Trump is very strong, but he could see that the European Parliament this week decided to suspend the trade agreement made last summer, last September, more or less, I'm not sure on the date, this agreement, and the European Parliament decided to suspend this trade agreement. It means that for the first time, Trump understood that Europe is not here to accept all the things that he wants today, tomorrow, something more. So this is very important, and in my view, is why Trump was more calm at the end of Davos meeting. And finally, I'd like also to say that for me it was very important that even that the Secretary General of NATO and Trump said we have an agreement. Antonio Costa, the President of the European Council, decided to maintain the special European Union, European Council to decide the relations, the transatlantic relations.
Thank you. In fact, the current situation, the current challenges that Europe faces, I think have been summed up very, very well by Timothy Gardonash. He's a professor at St. Antony's College, Oxford, and somebody I know. And he said that Europe right now is under attack militarily by Russia because of Ukraine, trade-wise attacked vis-a-vis trade by China, and politically by the US. And this is where we are. And I think handling these multiple attacks at the same time will actually tell us about how the future of Europe. I feel confident that you and both and I worked in the institutions long enough to know that each time there's a crisis, we tend to come out more united and stronger. And this is one of those phases. In fact, with respect to the potential agreement with Greenland, Cyprus has been mentioned because nobody knows exactly what is this agreement with NATO on Greenland. But there are reports that are saying that what they want to obtain is bases like the British bases on Cyprus, but obtain those in Greenland. Of course, as you very correctly said, the US can do whatever they want in the military bases they have now in Greenland. The only difference is that they do not own the land. And I think what is at play here is access to the resources that are on the land in Greenland. Let me move on to another thing which is very, very much in the news in Cyprus, but also I'm sure across Europe, the issue of Mercosur. How is the agreement with Mercosur seen in Portugal, and what would be your assessment of the agreement?
Yes, as you know, Mercosur agreement took more than 25 years to be agreed for the negotiation. And it's why I think that the decision of the European Parliament this week, it was a mistake. A mistake because today this agreement is much more than a trade agreement.
Absolutely.
This agreement is an instrument, a geopolitical instrument, because it's one way, because we have already the EU-Chile agreement. This agreement is one way to enter in the Western Hemisphere, because we know what is nowadays the strategy, the United States, the Trump administration, for what they name Western Hemisphere. It's why this agreement, it's very important, because it's a pillar that the European Union can use to enter, to be present in this Western Hemisphere. And this agreement is very important because population from Europe, from Brazil, Paraguay, Argentina, Uruguay, all together is a big market. And I think that this agreement taking 25 years, there are very important chapters to protect European people and to protect Mercosur people. It's very balanced concerning the access to raw materials, concerning social standards, refusing minor people working, and also the obligation to respect environment and the food security standards, and also something on gender balance. I think that the agreement is very balanced on the respect from the two sides of the agreement. Of course, it will take more 2 years. 18 months is 2 years at the Luxembourg court. But finally, maybe the Commission can find a way to activate part of the agreement in the framework of the exclusive competencies of the European Commission. But this way, it's not clear, is a plan B, but I think that the Commission must work on this approach to give the possibility that part of the agreement can enter in force before the 2 years that we need to wait.
Because there's a lot of controversy now in Cyprus about the impact of this agreement on certain sectors of predominantly farmers, has Portugal done impact assessment studies on different sectors, and has this been, how have they handled potential voices against this agreement?
It's very interesting because the Portuguese people, the owners, the workers from agriculture, they participate in the big demonstration in Strasbourg this week. Mm-hmm. But when the Portuguese television asked them, why are you here? Are you against Mercosur agreement? The answer was no. We are in favor because Mercosur agreement is very positive for the Portuguese agriculture, but we need to guarantee the financing of the agriculture funds. And I need to say that before, on the day before, I'm just looking to the figure, on the day before the demonstration, the Commission decided to increase the agriculture funds significantly. So it means that nowadays there are this compensation for the EU agricultors. But also there are always a clause, an article in the agreement saying if in a moment there are not a balance between the two sides, the Commission can, both Commission and Mercosur also, can demand to suspend one part of the agriculture. For example, on tomatoes, for example, on meat, if there are not a balance, a country can ask to the Commission to suspend this part of the agreement to rebalance the situation. is something that it's always in the trade agreements, and it's why I think that this agreement protects both sides. And in my view, is very important, because the old models of the trade agreements normally were good for Europe and bad for the other side, because it was the way to accede to raw materials, the production not respecting salaries, social rights, social standards, and so on. Now, I think that this balance was achieved thanks EU Commission and the European Parliament, and it's very fair, very balanced between both sides. And it's the case of Mercosur.
Thank you very much for this very, very clear explanation. I think a lot of people do not understand the mechanisms of trade agreements, and there is this built-up fear that catastrophe will come. You were very clear about how the agricultural budget of the EU has been increased to counterbalance Mercosur, which brings me to the next topic I would like to ask you about. You were so instrumental in all the negotiations between the European Parliament and the Commission on the agreement on the multi-annual framework program, which is basically the multi-annual budget, 7-year budget of the European Union, which is currently running. In this year, hopefully, potentially early 2027, we should have an agreement on the next 7-year budget of the European Union. With all your experience, and I cannot underline how many hours you worked in Brussels, it was not even humanly possible to keep up those hours, because also here in Cyprus, there is this logic that European parliamentarians don't work that much, which is categorically not true, at least not for all. I'd like to ask you, we're now going into these negotiations. Negotiations on the budget are complicated as they are. In this phase with, the financial problems, with the geopolitics changing drastically, and with also certain countries which are part of NATO having promised 5% of their budget going to military expenditure. Other countries like Cyprus are not part of NATO. How do you see the negotiations progressing, and what, in your view, are the most difficult, points in getting to an agreement? Because Cyprus currently has the presidency of the rotating presidency, and that is also one of the dossiers that's on the table for handling by the Cypriot presidency.
Thank you very much for the question and the way you raised the question. Because MFF can't be to pay the 5% of the GDP for defense. So this is very important, and if I can do a suggestion, is something that can't be in the mind of your Minister of Finances, because it's your minister it's not the Minister of Finances that negotiate, it's the Minister of Foreign Affairs, but finally they need to give an agreement. And the Minister of Finances can say to your Minister of European Affairs, you must include these 5% to help member states, NATO member states, to respect this standard 5%. So why I'm saying this? Because it's clear that EU must increase, EU as a whole, must increase the budget for defense. But it's clear, first step, that more coordination is needed. Because all the expenses, all together, the 27 is a lot. But what we don't have is coordination between defense strategies. And why? Because until now, member states never accepted to share sovereignty to share more sovereignty on defense. So this is the first step, coordination on the profile of the equipment, on the strategies, and so on. So coordination is needed. Second, we need to invest more on defense industry, because since a long time ago, we are saying that we need to increase the EU industry, but we need to increase EU industry in different fields, in different areas, on tech, for example, innovation, but we need also to invest on EU defense, industry for defense. So, on the MFF, on the negotiation of the MFF, multi-annual financial framework, the Commission is trying to introduce more flexibility. I'm in favor of this flexibility, but it was clear for the MFF 21-27 that flexibility was enough, because with COVID, we could use money from cohesion to finance the needs from member states to fight COVID, on equipment, on masks, also supporting jobs. We could use the flexibility to use money from cohesion. So, and the Commission tried to introduce more flexibility. I'm not against, but we need to understand which flexibility, because we need to maintain the balance between the power of the Commission and the capacity of the European Parliament as budgetary authority. So this is one point. A third point that it was very tricky with the first Commission proposal was the national dimension versus regional dimension. Mm-hmm. I agree that regions must have more capacity and more autonomy to manage and to use EU funds, but in my view, a national strategy is needed. And it's why I think that in the regulation, it must be clear the role of the regional authorities, but we can't jeopardize and we can't annihilate the national dimension. So this is very important. Finally, the amount. Of course, when we negotiate the MFF 21-27, we could increase for the first time the Commission proposal, because normally the Commission proposal is cut.
Yes, exactly.
On that case, we could increase on 16 Bs, and 11 Bs was fresh money, because we could negotiate in a good way with the Commission and find a way to increase the budget to support EU programs, like Erasmus, like health was 4 times more, like Invest EU, like programs on rights and values, on culture, because there are, it's a group of programs that it's very easy to cut, but they were at the moment very, very important because COVID, because we know that culture was frozen, health was very demanded, Invest was almost frozen because the economy was frozen. It's why we needed to increase these programs. So this is a challenge, because there are another challenge. We are discussing 2734.
Exactly.
So it means that we are confronted with an enlargement challenge, the enlargement challenge. Balkan countries, question mark, Ukraine, question mark, and we know that, for example, from the budgetary point of view, the entry of Ukraine in the EU, we don't know which statute, still discussing is ongoing, but it's clear that the architecture of the budget nowadays, of the EU budget nowadays, with 27 member states, can't support EU certified, 4 or 35. So it's something that we need to look also during this negotiation. It's why the colleagues nowadays, they have the same challenge that we had before, but also this challenge with enlargement. And also strategic autonomy, because strategic autonomy is something that is in our speech, but not in our action. So it means that we need to have a piece of... Voila. Of course, so we need to have an investment capacity to support competitiveness. We need to be more autonomous concerning energy. And I know that on this point, you know more than me, you know better than me that strategic autonomy on energy is very important. And there are other dimensions that we need to support to increase, to move from the speech to the political decision and to the reality.
I had no doubts that I was asking the right person to talk about the MFF. I think you know it better than anybody else that could be asked that question. One question which is more specific. In Cyprus recently, in fact, the day after the inauguration ceremony for the European rotating president, Cyprus taking over the rotating presidency of the EU, there was a video that surfaced, is now locally called the Videogate, which put some shadows on some of the decisions that may have been taken by the Cypriot government in view of sanctions, and people very close to the president were implicated. I am aware that there was a similar case in Portugal where I think Prime Minister Antonio Costa his name was linked to a potential scandal. I think you were then minister in that government. Could you please tell us, not the details, but how did he react? How did the political system in Portugal react to a potential scandal at that time?
So the situation of Antonio Costa was quite different. It means, I can explain, because since the beginning, Antonio Costa said that if there are a member of the government, a minister, a secretary of state, that was quoted, the name was referred, even without being charged, this member of the government might leave the government. Since the beginning, after it was proved that he was innocent, not guilty, but if he was quoted as I said, even that he or she was not charged, the fact that his name or her name was in a newspaper, Antonio Costa asked the minister or the Secretary of State to leave the government. It's why, and nowadays I can say that it was naive, in a press release about a specific case, the Attorney General decided to add a paragraph at the end saying that the person X, the person A speaking with the person B, he said, I'll speak with Antonio Costa, or I'll call Antonio Costa. Full stop. It was here in an audition, in a hearing from the calls. And the Attorney General, decided to introduce this paragraph. It was nothing linked with the case, decided to introduce this paragraph. And Antonio Costa, respecting his principle, decided to resign. and to leave the government. Of course, he could be replaced by another prime minister. Antonio Costa suggested to be replaced by another prime minister, but President of the Republic decided to convocate new elections with an absolute majority in the parliament. What was a shock to all of us, but in my view, what is important to answer to your point is this principle. If someone is quoted with even, as I said, without being charged, he or she needed to leave. This is our principle in the government with the socialist government.
And how long after the publication, the press release of the Attorney General, did Antonio Costa resign?
In the moment when the press release was published, he resigned immediately.
The same day?
On
the same day?
After.
Sorry?
The same hour.
Wow.
Immediately.
Okay. Thank you. I could not end this podcast without referring to an issue which is close to our hearts, that of the role of women. And I know that you were the youngest ever member of parliament in the Portuguese parliament. I forget at what age, when you just had a baby. Can you tell us about that experience, please?
Yes, it's a very nowadays, hopefully in the national parliament, the problem is already solved. It's not yet at the European Parliament. There are a new situation, but it's not yet with a good solution. When I was member of the Parliament, I was pregnant with my son, and there were no special condition for a mother or a father with a baby. So it means that me, as a mother, how can I say? I didn't go to the parliament. I didn't participate in the discussions. I didn't vote, but without any right. It means my party, when I was out, when I was at home with my baby, my party lose one vote. It was not a problem because it was a coalition government. We had votes enough to support our measures, but it was not fair. It means it was unacceptable. I think that 10 years later, the parliament introduced an article in the national parliament, and nowadays the MPs, the members of the parliament, has exactly the same rights than everybody. So the 4 months.
How old were you when you became a member of parliament? First time?
I was 28. I was 28. I was 28, yes. But I was also the first women secretary general of a political organization. But we need to say that before our revolution in 1974, the role of women in the society was zero at political level, economic level, family level. We couldn't leave the country, for example, without the permission of the husband. We couldn't have a passport without the husband. The passport was both together. So it was the role of the woman was zero. So it means that after the revolution, we could increase, and the Guterres government maybe was the government that gave more powers. And nowadays, it's clear that the gender balance and the equality between men and women is a reality, but we have still a gap on salaries. So it's something that we need to fight and to increase in political participation. There are women participation, there are a specific law. It means that the lists must, all the elections must respect a balance between women and men. So, and this is clear, if the list doesn't respect this equality, the Constitutional Court refuse the lists. But of course, it's something that we need to, first of all, defend the current rights, because as you know, the far right wants to fight some rights. We need to protect the rights that we achieved, and we need to fight for more rights, namely on salaries.
Well, thank you very much. Talking to you, it's always so informative and such a pleasure. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you on this podcast. Thank you very much, Margarida Marques.
Thank you, Androle, and good luck and congratulations to do this podcast.
Thank you.